Have you ever felt like you're trapped on like a hamster wheel?
Mm-hmm.
Just constantly busy, your inbox is overflowing, you're jumping from one urgent thing to the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
But underneath all that motion, there's this, nagging feeling that you're not really making a difference. Not on the things that truly matter.
Mm-hmm.
With the very pressure we feel to do more, to always say yes, is actually stopping us from contributing at our highest level.
It's such a common trap. We strive for success, and then when we find it, suddenly the floodgates open, all these opportunities, all these demands come rushing in.
Right.
And the focus that actually got us there in the first place, it gets lost because we're suddenly trying to juggle everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that tension, between being just busy, endlessly busy, and feeling truly effective,
Yeah.
that's what we're exploring today. We're looking at a particular book that has this, powerful, counterintuitive idea
Which is
that the path to real impact often lies in doing less.
less but better. So our goal here really is to unpack the most vital insights from this book. We want to help you figure out what's truly essential in your own life, in your work,
Yeah, figure that out.
and then how to cut out everything else, how to focus your energy where it's going to have the greatest effect.
And engaging with big ideas like these, it takes time, right? Time for reflection. That's something we really believe in.
Definitely.
It's actually why we developed Mindful Moments over on our YouTube channel. It uses AI book analysis to help you pause, reflect, think critically about concepts, just like the ones we're digging into today.
It's a great resource to sort of continue the thinking after listening here. It's all about that thoughtful engagement.
Exactly. So let's dive into that core principle, the book champions, the disciplined pursuit of less but better.
Weniger aber besser, as the German phrase goes.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when you contrast it with what the book calls the default state for so many of us.
Which,
The undisciplined pursuit of more, or non-essentialism. That's the mindset where we treat almost every opportunity, every request, as if it's equally important.
which leads straight into this paradox the author talks about, the paradox of success.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, it starts when you gain clarity, right? You figure out what's important, you focus, and that focus leads to success.
Makes sense.
But then success attracts more options, more demands, more distractions. Suddenly, everyone wants a piece of your time.
Ah, right. So the success itself creates noise.
Exactly. It diffuses your focus, scatters your efforts, and that diffusion is precisely what undermines the very clarity that made you successful in the first place. It's a cycle.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that. The book has a story about this, right? The author's personal experience.
Oh, yeah. It's a really powerful one. He talks about feeling this intense obligation, this pressure to attend a client meeting the day after his daughter was born.
The day after.
Seriously, he went, even though his gut was screaming at him, telling him he needed to be with his wife, with his new baby.
Why did he go?
He said yes, purely out of this sense of pressure. Fear of disappointing the client, maybe. But looking back, he felt awful about it.
I bet.
He felt he'd shortchanged his family, compromised his own integrity, and the kicker, even the client interaction felt hollow. He said they weren't impressed. They almost seemed to mirror his own thought, like, what are you even doing here?
So didn't even achieve the goal of pleasing the client.
Not really. It was a high-cost yes to something that, in that moment, was completely non-essential. A huge regret.
That story really hammers home the fundamental idea the book keeps returning to, the power of choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It quotes Madeline L'Engle saying, it is the ability to choose which makes us human. It's that core capacity.
And the author's own story about quitting law school fits here too, right?
Yeah, it does. He realized he hadn't actively chosen to be in law school. He just sort of drifted into it because it seemed like the thing to do.
Uh-huh.
And by not making a conscious choice, he had, in effect, made a choice by default. And for him, it was a bad one. He wasn't thriving.
So choice isn't passive. It's an action. It's something you do.
Exactly. We might not control every single option that comes our way. That's life. But we absolutely control how we choose among the options we do have.
And if you don't consciously exercise that power, that ability to choose,
well, then someone or something else will choose for you. Your boss, social pressure, the loudest demand. You basically surrender your agency.
okay, so if choice is key, then the next step is learning how to choose effectively. discerning the vital few from the trivial many, as the book puts it.
Yes, and this is crucial because, as the author states, almost everything is noise, and a very few things are exceptionally valuable. Most things just don't matter that much in the grand scheme.
That sounds like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
Exactly. The law of the vital few. Roughly 20% of your efforts, your inputs, tend to produce 80% of your results, your outputs. The trick is applying a filter to identify that critical 20%.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about Japan's quality revolution after World War II. They didn't try to fix everything at once. They focused intensely on eliminating just a tiny fraction of the root causes of defects and achieved massive improvements in product quality.
So focus on the biggest levers.
Right. Or look at Warren Buffett. His incredible wealth doesn't come from diversifying into thousands of stocks. It comes primarily from a handful of really big, carefully selected investments. He focused on the vital few opportunities.
That intense focus is captured by something the book calls the 90% rule. How does that work?
It's a really practical filter. When you're evaluating an option, whether it's a project, an investment, even a social commitment, you score it out of 10 on how much it aligns with your essential goals or how excited you are about it.
Okay.
And the rule is, if it's not a clear 9 or 10, then it's a no.
Not even an 8 or a 7. Those sound pretty good.
That's the discipline. It feels counterintuitive, right? Saying no to something that's perfectly good. The author talks about realizing this when he was selecting candidates for a class he was teaching.
What happened?
He realized that scoring someone a 7 or 8, while good, meant there was still hesitation. It wasn't a clear, enthusiastic, hell yes. And he found it liberating to decide that if it wasn't a 9 or 10, if it was just good enough, the answer had to be no. It freed up space for the truly great fits.
So good becomes the enemy of best in this framework.
Precisely. And you see the selective approach in top companies, too. Think about hiring at places like IDEO or Box, as mentioned in the book. They aren't just looking for someone competent.
They're looking for
It's an absolutely natural fit. If there's significant doubt, if it's not an immediate, strong yes, then it's a no. They apply a much, much tougher filter to find the truly vital person or opportunity.
Okay, so you identify the vital few using these filters. But then comes the hard part, right?
Yeah.
Protecting that focus often means saying no to the non-essentials.
Yes, and the book calls this the graceful no. It acknowledges that it takes courage, it takes real emotional discipline.
Courage, because why is saying no so hard?
Well, think about it. We fear missing out, FOMO, right? We fear rocking the boat, disappointing people we like or respect. Saying no can feel like confrontation, even when it isn't.
Yeah, it can even feel physically uncomfortable sometimes, that little knot in your stomach.
Totally. But the book makes a great point. Compare that feeling, maybe a few minutes of discomfort from saying no versus potentially days, weeks, or even years of regret and resentment from saying yes to the wrong thing, something non-essential that drains you.
That's a powerful reframe.
Yeah.
So how do you deliver this graceful no?
The book gives some really practical strategies. One is the no but. You politely decline the immediate request, but you offer an alternative or perhaps a future possibility. Like saying, I'm completely swamped working on Project X this month, so I can't take that on right now, but I'd love to connect in July once that project is wrapped up. It softens the no while still protecting your boundaries.
Okay, that sounds manageable. What else?
Another tactic, maybe more for email, is using an auto response strategically. The author apparently used one saying he was in monk mode while deep in writing the book.
Huh. Monk mode. I like that.
It set clear expectations that he wasn't available for immediate responses, giving him that crucial, uninterrupted focus time. And you know what? People generally understood and adjusted.
Interesting. What about dealing with, say, your boss? Saying no there feels trickier.
It can be. But there's a really powerful technique for that, too. When your manager gives you a new task or project, instead of just automatically saying yes and adding it to your pile, you can say something like, yes, I can definitely take that on to make sure I prioritize it correctly. Which of my current projects should I deprioritize or say no to instead?
So you force the trade-off conversation.
Exactly. It shifts the burden of acknowledging the trade-offs back onto the manager. It makes the choices explicit. Often, they might realize the new request isn't as important, or they'll help you reallocate.
There's a story about that, isn't there? Jin Young.
Yes. It's a brilliant example. She had protected time blocked out in her calendar for personal planning, something essential to her. An urgent work request came in during that block. She politely but firmly explained she couldn't do it right then because of her prior commitment, but she offered specific times later when she could do it.
How did her manager react?
Initially, not thrilled. There was some pushback, but she held her ground respectfully, and the outcome was fascinating.
What happened?
Not only did she get her protected time, but her colleagues saw her do it and were inspired to set better boundaries themselves. And perhaps most surprisingly, her manager actually came to respect her more for her clarity and discipline. It shifted the team dynamic.
That takes guts, but it paid off. It reminds me of the Clayton Christensen story, too.
Oh yeah, the Harvard professor.
Yeah.
He was in the high-pressure world of consulting early in his career, but he made a firm rule. No work on weekends or Sundays ever, for family and religious reasons.
That must have been tough in consulting.
Immensely tough. He apparently took a lot of flack for it, faced pressure to make exceptions. But he held his ground consistently, and eventually, people respected him deeply for it. He understood that if he made just one exception, the boundary would crumble.
So boundaries need constant reinforcement.
Absolutely. They're not set it and forget it. Okay, so besides saying no, we also need to watch out for commitment traps that keep us stuck in non-essential things, like the sunk cost bias.
Right. That's when you keep pouring time or money into something failing just because you've already invested so much.
Exactly. The classic example is the Concorde supersonic jet. Governments kept funding it for years, losing billions, partly because they'd already spent so much developing it, it felt too painful to cut their losses.
Or, like, staying in a bad relationship because you've already put years into it.
That's another common one. Or pouring more money into a losing carnival game trying to win back what you lost. We irrationally value what we've already sunk into something.
So how do you fight that bias?
The book suggests asking yourself a killer question. If I weren't already invested in this project job relationship stock, how much would I choose to invest in it now, knowing what I know today?
That detaches you from the past investment, forces you to look at its current value.
Precisely. It helps you evaluate it based on its present merit and future potential, not past baggage.
Okay, and what about that fear of missing out? FOMO. How do you deal with that when eliminating things?
One interesting idea is to run a reverse pilot. Instead of piloting something new, you test removing something you suspect is non-essential.
How does that work?
An executive in the book suspected a weekly report he produced wasn't actually valuable to anyone, so he just stopped sending it. He ran a reverse pilot, and nothing happened. No one complained. No one seemed to miss it. His suspicion was confirmed. It was safe to eliminate it permanently.
That's a clever, low-risk way to test the waters before cutting something.
Yeah, it reduces the fear. The whole process of elimination, the book frames it as editing life. It even points out the Latin root of the word decision.
Which means?
To cut or to kill. It sounds harsh, maybe, but the idea is that cutting away options, cutting away the non-essential, while sometimes feeling like a loss in the moment,
Ultimately brings clarity and joy.
exactly. It frees up your time, your energy, your resources for the things that truly matter, the things that bring real contribution and fulfillment.
Okay, so we've selected the essential. We've started eliminating the non-essential. The next piece is execution, making the doing part feel more effortless.
Right. And the very first principle here is crucial. Protecting the asset.
And the asset is us.
Yes, you. Your physical health, your mental energy, your emotional well-being, your spirit. That is your greatest asset. It's an instrument you need to make any contribution at all.
If you burn yourself out, you can't do anything effectively.
Exactly. Neglecting yourself damages the very tool required for essential work. There's another powerful story here about Jeff, a really successful CEO.
Whatever do?
He pushed himself relentlessly. Constant travel, very little sleep, always on. He achieved a lot by conventional standards, but eventually his health completely collapsed.
Oh, wow.
He ended up needing a long sabbatical and ultimately had to leave the company he built. His hard-won lesson, the one he shared afterwards, was simple. Protect the asset. You have to prioritize your own well-being.
And a huge part of protecting the asset, according to the book, is sleep.
A massive part. It's so often the first thing we sacrifice when we get busy, viewed as unproductive downtime. But the research highlighted in the book shows the opposite.
What does it show?
Well, one study looked at elite violinists at a top music academy. The very best performers didn't just practice slightly more than the average students.
Okay.
They slept significantly more, about 8.6 hours a night on average, compared to less than 8 for the others. And they napped more, too. Sleep was key to their peak performance.
It's not just about avoiding burnout. It actually enhances performance.
Absolutely. Brain research shows sleep is vital for regeneration, focus, memory consolidation, and creativity. Studies demonstrate that sleep, especially REM sleep, enhances our ability to solve complex problems and make connections between ideas.
Like the Lubeck study mentioned.
Right, where subjects who slept were much better at finding a hidden shortcut in a complex task. Their brains literally restructured the information during sleep. So prioritizing sleep isn't lazy, it's actually a strategic advantage.
Okay, so protect yourself, especially sleep. What else helps make execution effortless?
Building in buffers, creating slack.
Buffers, like
They-
spatting.
Exactly, like Joseph storing grain during the years of plenty in Egypt to prepare for the inevitable famine. Buffers are about creating a cushion, extra time, extra resources, maybe even extra energy to handle the unexpected things that always come up.
Life happens.
Life happens. Think about driving a car. You leave space between your car and the one in front, right? That space is a buffer.
Yeah, stops you crashing if they break suddenly.
Right. It reduces friction, prevents disaster. Buffers in your schedule, in your projects, in your finances, they do the same thing. They absorb shocks and reduce stress.
We're often terrible at estimating how long things will take. That planning fallacy.
Oh, notoriously bad. So a really practical buffer the book suggests is simply adding 50% to your time estimates for any significant task or project.
50%. That seems like a lot.
It might seem like it, but think how often things take longer than planned. If you think a report will take 2 hours, block out 3. If a project seems like 4 days, plan for 6. It dramatically reduces stress and last-minute scrambling. And if you finish early, bonus time.
Okay, I can see the value in that. Less guilt, less rushing.
Exactly. Another form of buffering is scenario planning. For any important project, actively ask, what are the risks here? What could go wrong? What's the worst-case scenario?
And then plan for those possibilities.
Yes. By anticipating potential problems, you can build in the time, the money, the contingency plans needed to mitigate them before they happen. That's creating a buffer against uncertainty.
Makes sense. What's next for effortless execution?
Removing obstacles, finding the bottleneck. The book uses the slowest hiker analogy from the theory of constraints.
The idea being that the whole group can only move as fast as the slowest person.
Precisely. In any process or project, there's usually one primary constraint, one major obstacle that's holding everything else back. Your job is to identify that specific obstacle and remove it.
Don't try to fix everything, just the main thing slowing you down.
Right. The author gives a really relatable family example. His wife wanted to contribute more in certain ways with their kids, but she felt constantly blocked.
What was the obstacle?
After talking it through, they identified the core constraint. Simply a lack of consistent, uninterrupted time for her to focus on those specific parenting goals.
Okay.
So they worked together to remove that specific obstacle. They created dedicated, protected blocks of time for her. And the result, they both ended up feeling like they were doing less total work, but achieving more in their essential roles as parents because she could focus on her highest contribution activities.
Identifying and removing the right constraint. Okay. What about motivation?
Yes. Progress. The book emphasizes that progress itself is probably the single most effective human motivator. And critically, even a small win matters enormously.
Small wins build momentum.
Exactly. They generate energy and enthusiasm. There's a fantastic example from Richmond, California's police department.
The positive tickets program.
Yes. They were struggling with high juvenile crime rates. Instead of only focusing on punishing negative behavior, issuing citations for wrongdoing, they started a program where officers also issued positive tickets.
For doing good things.
Yeah, for things like kids wearing bike helmets, using crosswalks properly, even just picking up litter. They actively looked for and reinforced positive behavior.
And the impact.
It was dramatic. Juvenile recidivism, kids reoffending, dropped from around 60% down to just 8%. A huge change.
Wow. Just by shifting focus slightly.
It's a powerful demonstration of achieving almost effortless execution, in a way. Getting huge results by changing the approach, focusing on reinforcing the positive, which is often easier and more motivating than constantly fighting the negative.
The author used something similar at home too, right? With screen time?
Yeah, a simple token system. Instead of constantly battling his kids over screen time, he created a system where they earned tokens for reading, which they could then spend on screen time.
So focusing on the desired behavior reading.
Right. And screen time reportedly dropped by 90% with much less parental effort spent policing it. It's about finding that minimal viable progress, that small win that creates a positive feedback loop.
Okay, small wins. What else makes things effortless?
Routine. The genius of routine.
How does routine help?
When you make essential tasks routine, you basically automate them. The conscious, effortful part of your brain doesn't have to work so hard deciding when or how to do them. That mental work gets shifted to the more automatic parts of the brain, like the basal ganglia.
So it frees up your conscious mind.
Exactly. It frees up cognitive bandwidth for more complex thinking, problem solving, creativity. Think of elite athletes, like Michael Phelps.
His pre-race routine.
Yeah, incredibly precise, always the same. Music, stretching, visualization. He didn't have to think about the routine under immense pressure. His body and mind just executed it automatically, allowing him to focus entirely on swimming his best race. Routine handled the essentials effortlessly.
So what are some practical routines people could use?
Well, one mentioned is doing the most difficult or most important task first thing in the morning. Ray Zinn, a longtime CEO, apparently did this religiously for decades. Get the hard stuff done before the day's chaos hits.
Makes sense. Tackle it when your energy is highest.
Another approach is themed days, like Jack Dorsey apparently used when running Twitter and Square simultaneously. He dedicates specific days to specific functions, Monday for management, Tuesday for product, etc., ensuring deep focus on key areas each week.
So routine provides structure and conserves mental energy.
Got it. What's the final piece for execution? It's about being present, focusing intently on what is important right now.
Living fully in the current moment.
Yes. There's a great story about a legendary high school rugby coach, Larry Gelwicks. His team had incredible success, and one of their guiding principles was a simple question. What's important now? WIN.
WIN. I like that. Keeps you focused.
It constantly pulled them back to the present task, whether it was a drill in practice or a crucial play in a game. Jiro Ono, the famous sushi master profiled in that documentary, is another embodiment of this.
Completely immersed in his craft.
Utterly, total focus on the single piece of sushi he's making right now. That singular presence is key to mastery, and it's key to effective execution.
Which is the opposite of multitasking.
Absolutely. The book really debunks the myth of multitasking, highlighting how it actually just diffuses your energy, increases errors, and makes everything take longer. True effectiveness comes from calmly, fully dedicating yourself to one essential task at a time.
Finding that singleness of purpose in the moment.
That's it. Okay, so putting all these pieces together, the choosing, the eliminating, the executing, it leads somewhere bigger.
It leads to becoming an essentialist.
Right. The book argues it's not just a set of techniques you pull out occasionally. It's really a fundamental shift in perspective. It becomes something you are, a way of life, a lens through which you view the world and make your choices consistently.
And it's not necessarily new ideas.
No, not at all. The book points out that variations of this simplicity, focusing on what truly matters, letting go of the extraneous, have deep roots in many different spiritual, philosophical, and wisdom traditions throughout history.
So it's tapping into something timeless.
Very much so. And the process of choosing this path, it's described as liberating and cumulative. Each essential choice you make actually makes the next essential choice a little bit easier. It builds on itself, becomes more habitual over time.
Does this apply to teams or organizations too?
Definitely. The principles translate. Being highly selective about who joins the team. Having a crystal clear, concise, essential intent, like asking, if we could only achieve one thing this quarter, what would it be?
Focusing everyone on the highest point of contribution.
Exactly. Helping each individual on the team identify and operate within their own area of highest contribution. It's about collective focus.
Like the Enric Salas story you mentioned earlier, finding his unique contribution.
Yeah, he was a successful academic scientist, but felt something was missing. By systematically saying no to good but not essential opportunities and really exploring what his unique intersection of skills and passions was, he eventually found his true calling.
Becoming an explorer in residence for National Geographic.
Right, a role that perfectly matched his unique abilities and allowed him to make his highest contribution to conservation. That's the potential outcome of applying these principles diligently.
So, the overall message really is, by embracing this disciplined pursuit of less but better, by getting good at eliminating the non-essentials, and by making the execution of the essentials as effortless as possible.
You don't just become more productive in a shallow sense. You actually increase your meaningful contribution, and you build a life that genuinely reflects what is most vital to you, a life that truly matters.
These ideas are incredibly powerful. They really offer a profound shift in how we might think about work, productivity, success, life, really.
Absolutely. And if this discussion has sparked some ideas for you, prompted some reflection, we really encourage you to explore those themes further.
Yeah, definitely check out Mindful Moments on YouTube and, our other podcasts too. They're specifically designed to help you engage more deeply with these kinds of transformative concepts and keep thinking critically.
It's about continuing the conversation with yourself.
Right. And maybe let's end with a thought from the book that really puts all of this into perspective. It asks you to imagine yourself years from now, maybe at the very end of your life. And it asks, what would you trade then to be back here now for just one more chance, this chance to be true to yourself? Wow. On that day, looking back, what will you hope you decided to do on this day, today?
That's a powerful question. It really challenges us to make our choices count right now.
Definitely. So if this exploration resonated with you, please do subscribe so you don't miss our future discussions.
And sharing this with someone else, a friend, a colleague who you think might benefit from these ideas, that's a great way to spread the message.
Absolutely. And you can also support the show and dive even deeper by purchasing the book itself. There's a link in the description.
Every little bit helps us keep these conversations going.
But most importantly, just keep thinking critically. Keep asking yourself, where is my time and energy really going? Am I choosing by design or just drifting by default? Start making those essential choices.